Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the NFL Draft Triple Take presented by UPMC. And a reminder before we get going today that all of these videos will be shared on Steelers.com, the Steelers mobile app, and the Steelers official YouTube page. You can also hear this audio in the Triple Take podcast on Steelers Nation Radio. And, of course, you can subscribe to that aforementioned Triple Take podcast wherever you download your favorite on-demand audio content. I'm Mike Prisuta, joined as always by Matt Williamson and Dale Lolley. We're here to review our most interesting tight ends heading into the upcoming NFL draft. If you have been with us previously, you know the format. Each of us will count down our top five selections, if you will, or candidates, prospects, and then we'll also throw you a sleeper, just a little bit more to chew on before we get out of here. But Matt, I wanted to start with you today, first talking about the position in general. And it seems like, boy, if there's a spot on the field where it's harder to translate what guys do in college to what they're going to do in the NFL, if there's a harder spot to do that than tight end, there aren't many.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, very few come into the league and produce at a high level. You really are kind of learning two different positions in terms of pass protections and blocking schemes, as well as routes. And a lot of these route combinations and offensive philosophies are, adjusting on the fly. Is this man or zone? Should I sit it down? Should I run through it? And the stats show you usually it takes tight ends to about age 27 until they hit their peak, which is much later than backs or receivers.
Yeah, to Matt's point, I look at that much the same way as I look at inside linebacker, because you're being asked to do so many different things. At inside linebacker, you're asked to cover, you're asked to play the run, you're playing zone coverage, you're playing man coverage. The tight end position, they're doing a lot of the same stuff. You're reading defenses on the run. You're being asked to run block. You're being asked to pass block. There's a lot thrown at these guys. That's why I think you see a lot of former quarterbacks get moved to the tight end position, just because hey, these guys got to be smart. They got to be able to digest things quickly on the run. And I think a lot of former quarterbacks can at least do that in the passing game. Where they lack a little bit is in the blocking part of it. And that's a problem with a lot of these guys coming out of college.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make, though, Dale. A lot of these quarterbacks, if you're any kind of prospect, you've got the size and the frame. So if you could put on some weight and then, apply that to the responsibilities that you gain at tight end and still keep that knowledge of offenses and how the passing game works. Logan Thomas has made a nice transition down there for the Washington football team. Virginia Tech quarterback and NFL tight end, and a pretty good one.
Yeah, Heath Miller was a quarterback when he went to Virginia and moved to tight end. So you see that a lot with a lot of the very good ones that they didn't start out at the tight end position, but they wind up there. A lot of them are just big receivers. We see a lot of that as well, but you see also a lot of these quarterbacks being moved to tight end.
Matt, let's get into our top fives. We'll start with you at number 5.
Yeah, and I'll say, I had a hard time coming up with number 5. The top 4, whatever order you want to put them, I bet we probably have the same names. So I went digging, and I didn't know anything about Kylan Granson from SMU. He's under 6'2". He's a little over 240 pounds. He's not for everyone. He's not an inline Mark Bruner, that's for sure. He plays tight end, he plays slot receiver, H-back, lines up at running back, lines up out wide. Total movable chess piece that has to go to the right offense. Maybe like even a Kyle Juszczyk, who they'll call a fullback, but he does the same type of things. So he has to go in the right spots, but he's an interesting player, moves well and productive.
Yeah, my guy, I went to where else? The SEC. And I picked Kenny Yeboah. He's out of Ole Miss. He's 6'6", 244 pounds.
Matt, I don't know if Dale's team's going to be a playoff caliber team, but I bet they win the Sugar Bowl.
That's what I'm going for here, Mike. That's what I'm going for. Much like Matt, I struggled to find that fifth tight end, but this guy caught my eye, and he caught my eye because I watched his tape against Alabama. And he had 7 catches for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns against Alabama. That's definitely showing that you can do it at a high level. He's a little high-waisted. He's long legs. I think he can fill out. He's not the the greatest blocker, but he's willing to do so. And he's a matchup kind of nightmare. 27 catches for 524 yards and 6 scores last season. Shows you he can get down the field a little bit, again, taking advantage of that size. So I put him in that number 5 spot.
I feel you on that point, doing it against Alabama. If he'd have done it a little bit more against anybody else, we might not be talking about him as a number 5. But the Bama tape, impressive. I've got Trey McKitty of Georgia. And, Matt, to your point about having a hard time finding a 5th guy, this guy caught 6 passes last season.
When do we get to my sleeper?
Could have been 7, but he went for 2 and didn't make it, so he's stuck on 6. But they loved him at the Senior Bowl, 6'4", 244. He did catch the ball at Florida State before he transferred to Georgia. And since so much of this position is projecting, I just think if he ends up with a team that actually wants to throw him the ball, he might be pretty good. It's a 5th tight end prospect. He's not my top 10 selection overall or anything of that nature. But, hey, as 5th tight end, why not? As 4th tight end, I've got Brevin Jordan of Miami. And I'll tell you what blew me away about this guy. Looking at some videos, and he lined up against Florida State, and there was a sweep right. And he had a safety on him at the line of scrimmage. Now, tight end's got a height-weight advantage on a safety. But the play was on the right hash, and he blocked that poor safety past the sideline. I mean, he just didn't stop. He just locked on and shoved the guy and kept driving his legs. And I thought, okay, this guy wants a block. We can teach him the rest.
Yeah, I have him at number 4 too, Mike. And to your point, he is a little undersized. They list him at 235 pounds. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Evan Ingram with the Giants in that respect. But he's a downfield weapon in the passing game, averaged 15.2 yards per catch last season. Not a great blocker, but a willing blocker to your point. He's going to lose some battles against defensive ends and that kind of stuff, but a lot of these guys will. But you have to be willing first to do those things before you can learn how to get better at that. And he'll get bigger as he's in the NFL. But he's a weapon, and I think you can use him in that respect, early in his career while he learns the blocking part of it.
Yeah, Jordan's my number 3 guy for basically all the same reasons you guys mentioned. Just a couple other notes to throw on top of him. Really good after the catch. I had him 3 instead of 4 just because in today's NFL, mismatches are king, and he can create some of those type of things. He's going to give linebackers problems. I mentioned really good after the catch. He is small, but he's also really young for the position coming into the league as a young guy. He'll probably throw another 10 pounds on in the next couple of years. His catching radius isn't great, though, because of his small size. He doesn't have these huge tight end catching radius, but you get him in space, he does a lot of damage.
Matt, you said you've got Brevin Jordan as your 3, right?
Yes.
And Hunter Long is your number 4.
Correct. And Long's the traditional guy. I mean, he's an inline Y. He's good in the passing game. He's a good blocker. He's got size. Really doesn't stand out and wow you in any, particular, situation or, traits, but he's a good athlete. I mean, his speed is probably a little underrated. Focal point of Boston College's passing game. Good football player.
Yeah, to your point about being the focal point of Boston College's passing game, and I have him at 3. He had 89 targets last year. That was 22 more than any other tight end in the nation. So, I mean, that kind of tells you that's Boston College. We understand that, but it tells you a little bit what they thought of him, as a player. I think he's solid. All right. You'll have a tough time finding any real holes in his game. I think if he came out, I don't know, 20 years ago, teams would look at him a little bit differently because he is that true, combo tight end that you're looking for. But in nowadays, you're looking for that guy who's, the Travis Kelce's and guys like that can get down the field and be a real matchup problem. I don't know that Hunter Long is that, but you're not going to be angry that he's on the field for you if you draft him.
Yeah, that went a long way in my analysis as well. I've got him at number 2 just because I don't think he's Kelce, coming up, Travis Kelce reincarnated. But I think he's probably the surest bet in terms of we know what this guy's going to do for us. and we know how to use him, and you got some options there. And he doesn't have the injury history that my number 3 guy, Pat Fryermuth of Penn State, does. I would had Fryermuth not undergone back surgery, I'd probably have him at number 2. Now, that's not necessarily something that you can't overcome. And Dale, we were talking about Heath Miller before. He had the sports hernia thing coming out of Virginia, and that got fixed, and the rest is history with the Steelers. So assuming the medicals check out, Fryermuth's going to be a real good NFL player, I think. But I've got him at 3 and Hunter Long at 2. Matt, you had Jordan at 3 and Fryermuth at 2.
Yeah, I already talked about Jordan, and I like him. Fryermuth is a lot more similar to Long. I think he's more gifted. He was also the focal point of Penn State's passing game when he was healthy, as you mentioned. Again, a physical guy, a powerful player. I think he breaks a lot of tackles. A good blocker, but finding great blockers is hard to do nowadays. And I think, you mentioned Long earlier, and we had talked about how a lot of these guys don't transition to the league very quickly. I think Long will, and I think Fryermuth will as well.
Yeah, I think, when you have, I mean, if you're looking for size at the position, he's 6'6", 259 pounds. I mean, you just don't see that with a guy that can run. Now, he's not the best athlete. Again, he's 6'6", 259 pounds. But that's going to be a matchup issue. I don't care who you are, because he's going to be bigger than most of the linebackers covering him. He's going to be faster than most of the linebackers covering him, or at least as fast. And you can't put a defensive back on him because he's going to tower over those guys and just overpower them. So I think he's going to Matt's point, I think he and Long come in and play very well right away. And I think that with the number 1 guy too, but I think
that's kind of a layup.
A much different kind of player.
Kyle Pitts of Florida is he's all of our number 1s. Dale, is this the biggest disparity between the best prospect at the position and the rest of the field of any position in the draft, or is Trevor Lawrence in the same kind of category at quarterback? This seems real obvious to me that Kyle Pitts is the class of the tight ends.
This might be a bigger gap than that, because I think, when you look at where Pitts is going to be drafted at, he could go top 5. He'll definitely probably go top 10. You may not see another tight end drafted until midway through the second round. It's that kind of situation. And then the fall off, as we talked about, trying to find that 5th guy was tough. So there's not as many guys at the tight end position as there are at quarterback. Pitts is, 6'6", 239 pounds. He's essentially a little bit bigger than Chase Claypool. Plays a similar style of game to Chase Claypool. They just put a TE next to his name. He is not going to block anybody. Not that he can't block anybody. He'll at least get in the way and do that kind of stuff. But you don't want him doing that on a regular basis. He is a receiving threat. I mean, how are you matching up to that? You put a cornerback on him because he can run.
Well, let me tell you what happened when Mississippi put a cornerback on him.
Well, yeah.
Press coverage. I saw this. I was just watching this today again, and it's press coverage on a red zone play, and he beats the press coverage. Then he gets separation at the goal line, catches a low and away fastball right at the pylon, and stays in bounds. And the DB comes up like, "What?
What are you supposed to do?
What do you do with this?" Like, the answer.
To your point, Mike, he had 12 touchdown catches on 43 receptions this year. 12. That's 25% of his catches, but more than that, went for touchdowns this year. I mean, this guy's a red zone magnet.
When he wasn't doing what I just described, he was running down the seam, catching the ball, pushing the guy away, and then running away from him. Matt, this guy, if you're looking for a tight end, he's your guy. I mean, if you think you want the best tight end in the draft, trade yourself into a position to get this guy.
I don't even care if you call him tight end or pass catcher. I mean, if Gronk and Randy Moss had a baby, it'd be Kyle Pitts. And obviously that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think he's really in the converation.
I think it's an exaggeration. It's an impossibility.
Well, yes, that's probably unlikely to happen. But I think he's in contention to be the second best player in this draft behind Lawrence. A total nightmare. I mean, he's as dangerous as a pass-catching weapon as I can remember. I mean, he may go higher than any tight end in history. I mean, Vernon Davis, Kellen Winslow Jr., I mean, those type of guys, he's rarer than them.
What would it look like if Gronk and Mike Ditka had a baby?
He'd probably be first or second on this list.
That'd be a very tough baby.
Yes, you wouldn't want to mess with it. Dale, who's your sleeper?
I went to the Big Ten, Mike, and I'm going with Luke Farrell out of Ohio State. And, you know, he's 6'6", 256 pounds. He caught about 25 passes in his entire career at Ohio State. But this guy can block. He is physical at the point of attack. This is the kind of player that nobody thinks about when you're going into the draft, because all you do is you look at, oh, this guy ran this and that guy ran that, and this guy had all these catches and did this. Luke Farrell's a guy that you're going to look up 10 years from now, and he's still going to be in the NFL because he's going to play special teams for you. He's going to be at least your number 2 tight end because he blocks better than, you know, he'll probably get up to 265, 270 pounds. He's essentially an extra.
He's going to be the next Matt Spade.
I mean, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you're taking a guy like Luke Farrell in the 7th round,
yeah,
those guys stick around. And I like this guy. I think he's really physical.
Yeah, that's Matt. Who you got?
Another guy that doesn't have much production is Tony Tremble from Notre Dame. He's their backup tight end. He's their number 2. I guess they have a young guy that's a real star in the making. He's not, you know, thinking about it, he really isn't that much on the hoof to look at different than Chase Claypool at Notre Dame. I mean, 6'4"-ish, 240-ish, you know, really explosive though. And he can run, but boy, the blocking, go YouTube Tony Tremble blocking on, and you'll enjoy it. He is nasty. He loves to knock people out. He drives them into the ground. They put him in motion and he blasts defensive ends. I mean, he is a fun guy to watch. I bet he'll be a demon on special teams too.
You know, that Notre Dame team the last couple of years, not national champion caliber, but pretty close. You know, good enough to get to the playoff, and a lot of interesting guys. We're going to be talking about some more of them as we go down the road here with these position previews. But they have had it going on the last couple of years, at least in terms of regular seasons and guys really making themselves known. Going back to Claypool, I mean, it's
almost like they're an SEC team, Mike.
Well, what I was going to say was I don't know what Notre Dame does to get over that playoff hump, but I don't know what anybody does to get over the Alabama hump. I mean, that just unless you're Alabama or, you know, one or two others, that the road only goes so far. But I'm trying to give Notre Dame some credit here for producing some players, and I think it's going to continue to do so. I went with your guy, Yeboah Dale, my sleeper, just because he had a good game against Alabama. So, you know,
good start.
Get out of him a little more often.
Put you on the radar.
Maybe you're going to be on to something. That's going to do it for our tight end program, but we're going to have many more of these to come leading up to the NFL draft. The NFL draft triple take is presented by UPMC. All these videos will be shared on Steelers.com, the Steelers mobile app, and the Steelers official YouTube page. That's not to be confused with the Steelers unofficial YouTube page. Make sure it's the official YouTube page. You can also hear this audio in the Triple Take podcast and on Steelers Nation Radio. You can subscribe to that Triple Take podcast wherever you download your favorite on-demand audio content. For Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson, I'm Mike Prisuta. Thanks for finding us, and we will be coming at you again soon. The NFL Draft Triple Take presented by UPMC.